Okay, so in this bathroom, I'm gonna be renovating it, but under a budget. We're gonna do a fiberglass shower insert. We're gonna convert a tub to a shower, but we're also gonna make sure that we update this well so it can last a very long time. So I'm not going cheap, but I'm going on a budget. It's actually a fairly large bathroom. It's almost 10 foot long by 6 foot wide. So this is a really nice space. And you know, this is a reason why there's a budget, because there's a lot of materials in a bathroom this size that can really add up. See, there is a leaking issue that I don't understand what the issue is. This does not seem to be leaking. It's a 3-handled faucet. That needs to be replaced. You need to have an anti-scald. And then obviously the tub itself is in bad shape. It's got cracks, it's got rust. It just needs to be replaced. So we're gonna be putting a walk-in shower versus this tub. The sink area, we're gonna just do a little bit of modification. Obviously update the vanity itself. This is a 36-inch vanity. We're gonna stick with the same style, only we're gonna have a little bit more storage. And then we're gonna be converting this small recessed medicine cabinet into a much larger, cleaner looking version of a recessed medicine cabinet. I really find it to be a really useful space. A lot of clients really love having recessed niches, just not like this. So we'll replace that. We'll update the lighting. And then one thing that was really an eyesore for me was this, having a light fixture right next to the fan. We need light over here, but not like this. We need to change that out. Okay, so let's get started here. So the first thing you want to do though is you want to shut off water at the main shut-off valve at the meter of your water supply. You want to make sure that you turn off water to this entire bathroom during the demo process. A lot of these old valves that are connected to your toilet or your sink are usually pretty well corroded and can leak as soon as you go ahead and remove, try to turn them off. So shut off the water during the duration of the main demolition of this. And then where I really like to usually start is just getting some of the fixtures out of the way so I can get started. So this is going to be a really long forum video, so make sure that you use the tabs down below to speed up to the sections that you are interested or needing help with. But I really wanted to put a full bathroom renovation project together here so that you can view the entire process. And hopefully it helps you out and be able to guide you through that. So I'll be coming in every once in a while to help guide and further explain things that I didn't do when I was actually doing the footage. So, all right, let's get started. Let's get rid of this toilet and move on with the rest of the demolition here. Okay, so first step we're going to do is take off these valve trim. This is before we demo this tub surround. So a lot of times these things are corroded on there. Wow, look at that. That's already falling apart. Wow. So that's already saturated. Let's just take a look at this. Wow, that's completely saturated. And this would be one reason you definitely don't use drywall for your backer board. That's terrible. All right, well, okay, so we're gonna be saving this drywall. So I just wanna be sure not to cut too much out. So I'm going to put some lines for my Sawzall. This side is a knee wall or a partition wall, so I'm not too concerned about that. But I'm also not going to be removing the ceiling. So you want to make sure that you take a razor knife and score this so that you don't tear out the paper against the ceiling. So yeah, definitely some mold. So as you can see, this is black mold. Black mold. So this is again why you don't want to have drywall butting up against your tub. So all this is basically, there's really nothing left of this. It's all kind of falling apart. So definitely don't put drywall against your tub deck like this. You want to make sure there's a waterproofing material against your tub. All right. All right. So we'll take apart our overflow first. I'll take apart the drain assembly before we lift this tub out. Okay, so I'm taking out this drain. I'm using a nice rigid tool for removing the tub drain. So let's put this on here, and I think we just snapped them. Yep. So a lot of times this will just completely ruin the cross tees in your drain, which is not fun. So we'll have to address that. I'm replacing this tub, so I'm not even concerned about the tub. I'm just going to use a grinder. Cut this out of here. He's stubborn. That's weird. I mean, it really is tough to say. Okay, so this copper is really ugly. It's basically corroding is what it's doing. That green is a bad sign. So if you see this, I would recommend inspecting the rest of the plumbing in the bathroom because it might be just as bad a shape. And the client actually in this home has had to replace multiple joints where there is pinhole leaks in this copper. So I already kind of know that there's an issue with the copper in the house because they've had to repair it a bunch of times. But knowing that and then seeing this, I want to see the rest of this copper. So we're going to cut this out to the corner. Okay, so at least I know now where the lines are. So now I can just run new lines down along this stack and run new lines down to the basement. Because at this point, I think I'm just going to replace all the copper. I really don't want to have any issues with this. This doesn't look bad here in these joints, but you know, if you're going to replace all of this over here, you might as well just go all the way down to the basement. So then now you have have everything brand new on the upper level. Okay, so
stand on the other side.
3/4 plus 10.5. Okay, so 23 1/4. Well, let's just get some. Okay, so we're gonna be putting a final floor down, but we want to prepare for tile. And so technically you could probably just go straight over this existing linoleum with your floating floor, but you can't tile over it. So we're gonna get this down to the original subfloor. Best thing to do is to cut your base trim, because it's probably painted 100 times, and this will prevent it from pulling the paper off of the drywall. So just score your base trim before removing it. What I like to use is a 36-inch bar. Am I even in the frame? There's a 36-inch bar and just a regular one. And we'll just try to get underneath of all of this stuff. So this stuff was really awful. I wouldn't expect you to have this type of problem with most 1/4-inch laminate plywood going over top of your existing floor, but you never know. This was pretty well glued down. They had some kind of tar consistency underneath of it too that kind of really made it stick to the bottom of the subfloor. Hindsight, in a lot of ways, with the amount of effort it took to actually scrape this all up, I probably would have been better off just cutting out all the plywood and putting new plywood down at this point. But I was already halfway through the bathroom at this point, so just scraping it up was, really the option that I went with, obviously. But you kind of have to evaluate how difficult some of these things are. It might actually be worth just literally cutting with a sawzall around the perimeter of the room and just pulling up the entire amount of plywood and then just replacing it, rather than possibly hurting yourself by trying to remove this stuff. Okay, so we're just going to cap this off. We're going to run new lines down to the basement, but for right now, to get the water back on, we're just going to eliminate everything in the bathroom here. Okay, so this is a gauge for depth, and then it's also a deburring tool. There's a little deburring tool inside here. Make sure that's smooth around that pipe. So let's just sand this down first. This is a gauge, so put a mark on your piping. And we're just going to use a little shark bite. Just want to make sure it goes down to your line. Again, down to my line. So now that's capped. So now I can get the water back on. This all goes to that. We're good. Okay. Okay, so we're going to cut out some of this subflooring because I need to move the drain. So this is the part where it gets a little bit overwhelming when you open up that existing floor and seeing what you're working with, and if things are not done or not correctly done to begin with, it makes it even more complicated to adjust for things. My main goal here was to get a 2-inch drain to my new shower receptacle because I only had an 1.5-inch drain, but uncovering this I realized that there wasn't any venting that was done properly for the sink or the shower area, so that was all going to have to be redone in order to get a new drain line for my shower. Okay, so this is a 4-piece system, so it comes with the 2 sides, the back and the bottom. Main reason they make it this way is so that you can actually get it in a remodel job like this, because otherwise you would never be able to take this whole unit and get it through the doorways. So this is a Clarion tub. I don't really do fiberglass showers all that much, but I've been really impressed with the Clarion models because of the thick fiberglass construction. I always find that the thinner it is, the weaker it is, and the less likely it's going to last a long time. But this stuff is made pretty well, and I've been really pleased with the durability of it. So, but you just want to take this apart before you bring it in your home. So you got to take these little packing strips off of here. Okay, so this is a sign of a bathroom leaking. You can see all the discoloration from the drywall. And when it gets this bad, you really should just replace the drywall in this area, because I guarantee there's mold growing on the back side of this drywall at the very least. Now, I mean, in all intents and purposes, you stop the leak, it'll dry out, but you still want to address the damaged drywall. Most likely, this is not going to cover very well. So you can see black mold kind of right here in the corner here. So all this has just been saturated for who knows how long, but definitely something you need to address. Okay, so this drywall corner is going to be problematic with sliding this unit in. Plus, I need to fur out all the 2x4s in order to overcome the flange on the edge of the fiberglass unit. So I'm just going to get rid of this side of the corner, put a new piece of quarter bead on. But it'll be easier if I can get rid of that corner. So I'm just going to take my Sawzall and cut it out. Okay, so we just dry fitted our fiberglass unit here. So we're just gonna be using a standard no caulk fiberglass shower base drain made by Odie. So the way this works is just basically using a rubber gasket that goes around the pipe, and this locking nut will lock around the 2-inch pipe. So you want to be able to determine your riser pipe to go about midway in the fitting, so about 1 inch below the top surface of the Odie drain. So just 1 inch below the surface of this, so that this caulkless fitting will sit nicely on it. And then the locking ring, you don't want the locking ring to be above. You want it to be like either flush or even just a little bit above actually. But if you have it down below, then you can't tighten this all the way, because this little piece goes in here to tighten it. So if it goes down below, you can't tighten it. So you want to make sure that this locking nut doesn't go below, you don't have the riser pipe going up above it. So this is just one way to go about it, and that is to measure and then cut that riser pipe exactly where you need it. Another way that is probably a little bit more foolproof is to actually just allow the riser pipe to extend up out of the drain and then cut it down with an inside pipe cutter. So I'll demonstrate that here, showing you how to go about doing it in that fashion. This might actually be a better way for you to go ahead and do that. Let's measure down and see where we're at. So we got a 2-inch hub. So the actual drain itself is 2 inches, and we're flush with it right now. So we only have to cut about 1 inch off of that. So what I would do is just measure on my inside pipe cutter and put a little mark about 1 inch. Make sure the bevel is facing up. The rubber gasket is flush with the top of the pipe. Now you can take your locking ring. Okay, so we'll just move this out and get some mortar. All right. Anytime that there's something wider than 16 inches, you want to put an extra stud in. And the other thing, when you're installing a fiberglass unit, it's really important that this back wall is plumb. If this is not plumb, none of your wall panels are going to go in correctly when it meets the base. So that's really, you can get away with the side walls being unplumbed, even if it's a 1/4 inch. It's not the end of the world. But when it comes to the back wall, if that's off, it's not going to sit correctly. So just really pay attention to your back wall. And then, we're not doing tile, but it's still a good idea to just make sure that your studs stay in line with one another. Pretty good. Okay. All right, so then let's go down and mix a little bit of that mortar. I want to show that mortar. Okay, so we're going to be using some mortar mix for underneath this fiberglass pan. I would just make sure that it's a mortar mix and not a cement mix. You don't want all that aggregate in there. You want to be able to move this around and get it to now. Now we're going to be doing a little bit of leveling. So we're going to make this a little bit thicker, probably as thick as what you would lay brick or block with. But if you were just to set it without having to level anything out, you can make this pretty fluid, because it's just made to set that tub. But this is going to give a little bit of reinforcement and get me perfectly level. Yeah, so that's about what I would set a brick with. So that's fairly thick. To connect this pan, my OD drain, I want to use 100% silicone. It has to be 100% silicone. So we're going to put a big bead on the actual pan, and we're also going to put a bead right on the actual drain assembly. So you can see how that's all oozing out of there. Don't worry about the excess, but that's what you want to see. You want to make sure that this is completely sealed. And then on the back side, put your rubber gasket, then your paper spacer, and then tight. Just all that needs to be done is hand tighten. Okay, so then you put your rubber gasket on, and then your little spacer. And that's all it really gets, is just hand tightened. Okay, so for the mortar, we just want to put some blobs. So I know we had a little bit of unlevelness in this back corner. Now this is mainly, now you could technically just set this in place without anything, but this is going to give you a little bit more stability, and it's going to make it feel really rock solid underneath it here. So the whole thing doesn't have to be completely encased with cement. It's just made to basically help support underneath of it. Best way to go about this is try to set it down into the mortar. Okay, so that's pretty level that way. This could be, just step on the back corner here a little bit just to get it set level. Okay, that's good. All right, then we'll pre-drill. Again, make sure you're nice and level. And then you want to pre-drill your holes. And then if you do have a gap, we do have a slight gap here, you want to just shim this. Make sure that that stays tight. You don't want to pull this into the stud. And yeah, anywhere there's a gap, just shim it out. That's not too bad. Okay, so the way this works is you want to have the tapered edge facing up, because the way this goes in, it'll basically tighten and push this gasket out and make a watertight connection. If you do it the other way, it's not going to be as good of a seal. So always make sure that the taper edge is up. And just put it around the drain. And you can use a screwdriver to okay. All right, so you basically you really don't want this rubber gasket being way above the pipe. You kind of want it to be even with it in order for it to seal process. Okay, and then we can just take this. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's nice and tight on there. All right, we're good. Let's clean that up. Okay, so we're gonna update our medicine cabinet here. These things, anytime I've ever seen them, they always look like this, just out of plastic, hard to clean. They end up turning into something that you can't clean anymore. So we're gonna put in a much nicer recessed niche to upgrade on this budget bathroom. So our vanity is going to be 36 inches. It's just going to stick right to the corner. So we're going to be 18 inches to the center. And then for the rough-in opening for this cooler recessed niche, you need to be 29 1/4 by 25 1/4. So we're just going to leave it at the same height. This is not a bad height, 49 inches, 48 inches. Typically, your countertop after it comes up is about 37 inches. So this leaves, what, about 10 or 11 inches above the vanity, which is not bad. And then just to take a look at what 25 1/4 would be. So that still works pretty well. So you basically have about a 7-inch center to the light fixture. We can always move that up if we decide, but that's really not a bad height all around. So 49 inches off the floor, I'm happy with that. So we're just gonna cut out the opening at the exact width, because I don't want to do additional drywall work. And this is obviously the back side of the shower, so I can add any framing pretty easily from the other side if I needed to. Now I do want to put a stud down here, and this is mainly, you know, for mounting a towel rack, or really you need some more ability to screw this in. So we'll get a stud down here, 46. Okay, so this is obviously not the same size, or I should say we got quite a gap here. So we almost got a 1/2 inch gap here. So using this existing drywall is just not going to be conducive, because everything's going to be shimmed out, and then you're going to have a hard time lining up your drywall, or in this instance, we're going to be doing a tile backer board for some tile up here. So this is going to be problematic. I'd rather fur out this whole wall than to try to work around this little piece of drywall. So let's go ahead and just remove the rest of this. And then we can also put a nice, some support right against here going up as well. But really, I mean, by the time we try to finish this and finish that, it's just really not worth it. It's a lot more headache than it's worth. Okay, then we'll get a 2x6 here to span between these two. Okay, so we're gonna just use some fire and sound for this back wall, so you don't hear anything in the shower. There's a hallway right here, and really no insulation here at all. I mean, you got some insulation in the attic, but this stuff, the mineral wool, I really like a lot, and really important, mold resistant. So pretty nice stuff. So we're gonna just use this on that back wall. Okay, so grab bars. Very important if you're doing a walk-in shower for anybody elderly. And even if you're not going to install them, I would really highly recommend getting some blocking up, so that if you do decide to add them, that you can have something strong to go into. Now, this is obviously a fiberglass unit, so they're really not going to work at all retrofitting afterwards. So you need to have framing behind a fiberglass unit in order for these grab bars to work at all. Really simple with this particular tub. All I got to do, so I always like to keep my grab bars around 36 inches off the floor. So there's our laser. So I'll be able to go anywhere in here. What I'm going to use is just like a 2x10, so I have plenty of room. So even if they want it a little bit higher, I have the opportunity to mount that. So really simple. This just goes on the outside of the studs in this particular model, because there's an 1.5 inch gap between the fiberglass and the wall. So we'll just put this up. It's kind of centered somewhere within the laser area. And just screw this in place. Okay, so we're going to put one on this wall. I highly doubt we're going to use this, because really there's usually no need for one here, especially when you have a grip here. But this is just in case they decided they wanted one. So there's no harm in putting this in there, because if you don't use it, it doesn't really matter. This is the shower head height. See, they had this around 77 inches. It's kind of too low these days, and I know the person that lives here is about 6'2", so I'm going to raise this up to about 82 inches. and make this a lot higher. And then, so yeah, let me just put a blocker in here for the shower, 15 inches. Head blocking, I usually leave about 1 inch behind the rough-in framing because you just don't want the port to overhang your finished wall. So if you leave this back about 1 inch, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, just as long as it's behind. So we'll dry fit this first. Yeah, so the side blocks can't be in there. Okay, so just like that. Yeah, okay, so that might be need to shim there. Okay, so I just installed my back panel here. So one of the things when you install this is first you want to make sure that, you know, this back wall was plumb, and then also make sure your side walls are plumb. Now, on these side flanges, you need to pre-drill and screw in every 6 inches along the seam. So on this side, we're good because we have a stud right here. But on this side, we're gonna have to add some additional framing in order to bump that out properly. So we'll end up getting a stud down to the bottom here, and then we're gonna have to use some 3/4 inch plywood on this side because our recessed niche or our recessed medicine cabinet is gonna interfere with basically having something to adhere to. So we'll add some additional framing here. I'll take this back out. All right, so you want to make sure this is all nice and clean, and then you want to use 100% silicone. This is just a white silicone. So you want to put this all along the back here. One of the nice things about this setup is they have these pins here, so this just lines the whole unit up. So what you want to do is just kind of hold this up above and then slide it down, and then you just have to line it up with those pins. Go. Okay, so then you want to just make sure that your wall is plumb. So if it's not, for any reason, shim this out to bring it to plumbness. But hopefully you paid attention to whether your back wall was plumb before you did this. So in this instance, we're completely plumb, just having no shims on the back here. So okay, so then pre-drill your holes. And then this stud is slightly out a little bit, so just put a shim there. And every 6 inches on the vertical seams here. All right, and if there's a little bit of space here too, shim that out. the same here. We'll put a caulk joint along the base here. And we'll also go along here. Okay. Simple as that. Let's make sure that seam stays tight and it looks good. And any silicone, make sure. Again, we'll be addressing those seams later on after everything's about finished. Okay, so we're going to be installing a American Standard flash valve. This valve, first off, has some PEX. You can order these with the PEX connections already there, so it really makes it nice and easy. But this, with a thin wall type of application, which is what you would consider a fiberglass surround, it's very easy to actually really install. You just cut a 3.5 inch hole, and then this is going to be your mounting block on the back side of the flange that'll hold itself to the back. So you have to first determine where you want the valve. Now typically, I mean, each surround is a little bit different, so you might have different shelving units or something like that, but you just want to be obviously in the area where there's you know, a solid surface. But typically 48 inches is about the right height. So it really depends. I mean, that's a real personal preference as well. But we're just going to go right here in the middle at 48 inches. Now I did use my laser here to center off my drain. I just wanted to make sure that this is aligned with my drain. And then you can double check, like this unit is 33 inches wide. That's to the flange, but it's actually a 32 inch surround. So, you know, you're approximately 16 inches to the center line. So just one way to go make sure that you're centered. Now let's just go ahead and mark that 48, we'll go 46 inches. Anywhere in between 45 and 48 inches usually works. And I'm going to use a hole saw. This is a 3.5 inch. You have to have a 3.5 inch so that when you put this valve on, that there's, you know, this sticks out around it so that it can bond. Basically all these little stubs right here have to be within that thin wall coming out. So this is 3.5 inches from here to here. Okay, so then when we go to install this, you can see how all these tabs kind of hold exactly where they need to be. There we go. So it's a tight fit, but you want to make sure that these tabs are pretty tight against here, because there's an anchoring system we'll show you here in a little bit that you basically just wedge this onto it. So that'll work. Now we know where we need to be. We can go ahead and start putting the faucet together. So I'm gonna just make sure that my laser stays centered here so that I have a reference of where, you know, because once I take the panel off, I'm not gonna have a reference of where this needs to be. So I'm just gonna keep my level mark right in the center there. And then now this is gonna just kind of float behind here, but I'll be anchoring my shower head port up top. So, but this will at least give me a good reference of where I need to cut my PEX and connect my valve. Now, when you use copper, I always recommend using the type L copper. There's L and M. So the L is usually has like a blue label on it. The M has a red label on it. This house was built in, I think, 1976. And that's a really popular time when they started using the thinner copper, and they used the type M. And what has happened in a lot of the areas in this area specifically is that there is pinhole leaks in majority of the copper. So I don't know whether it's a water supply issue. You know, I'm sure there's lots of reasons of why that happens, but the primary reason is just having that really thin copper, and then it's just not lasting as long. I mean, it lasted obviously 30 some years, but really this stuff should last hundreds of years like it used to. So just get the type L. It does cost more money, but you're going to be better off. Your client's going to be happier, and then you know that you'll be able to have it last for a long time. Okay, sand that out. And we'll go ahead and put our shower port on first. So this is just a 1/2 inch female adapter, and it always has these little legs on the back to screw it into place. So you can find that at every home store. So this is important. You always want to use flux paste with your fittings, and then just make sure you touch every part of that copper with it, because what this does is kind of helps siphon the solder into the joint. So really, in my experience, anytime that you missed the spot with the flux, it was kind of an area where it could possibly leak. So, and then once you do that, just remove some of that excess there. Okay, then I always just use MAP gas. It heats everything up a lot quicker. And then use a lead-free solder as well, because you definitely don't want lead in your drinking water supply. So when you torch this, you just want to heat the fitting. I'm gonna have a little bit of, let's get a little bit of water here on my rag, because I want to wipe off the excess solder just to make it look neat. So you want to heat the fitting because you want it to solder to siphon into the joint. You don't have to excess, but just go all the way around, and then you can just wipe off, make it look neat.
Yeah, the connection of this video is off and on.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's what somebody just said.
It keeps chopping out.
Yeah, it's just off and on because of the signal here. Yeah, I have a feeling.
I wonder if we should keep going then.
Just keep going.
Okay, so since we're going to be heating this valve up, we're going to take this plaster guard off, and we want to take all of this apart because you don't want to heat up the valve itself, or any of the components within it, I should say. So I just pull this all apart. Okay, so these, I got an integral valve, or with stops here, because I mean there is an access panel here, but I'm going to be up at like 48 inches, so you're really not going to be able to access this valve. So I got the integral shut off. I always recommend that. Yeah, I honestly just buy the ones with the integral valves all the time, just because I don't know, it's a better thing to have it right on the valve that you're installing. Okay, so we take these out. So this is what would melt if you heated that up. That would be a problem. So pay attention to the up. You got hot, cold. Definitely don't want to be installing this upside down. So, all right, and we'll sand out this fitting. Okay, and then it came with a little plug in case you needed it. which we do. Okay. So just put it on our port here, get some flux on that. Can you tell if it's cutting out?
Before I think I could. I'm reading the comments. Somebody said he's probably somewhere rural. Somebody thought it was their Wi-Fi, but mostly just keep going.
Okay. Well, that's kind of disappointing. Okay, so it's just getting the flux on all of this. Okay, so then you just want to pay attention to this portion being flat. You see that over here?
Yeah.
So making sure that this sits flat with this so that everything's in line with one another. Okay. Just gonna melt that bag. So all types of technical difficulties here. Didn't have the sound, the GoPro went out, the Wi-Fi wasn't working well, and that's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. But anyways, just finishing up your soldering joints, make sure that you're heating that fitting. And then I like to make sure that I touch that solder all the way around the joint so that you make sure that the solder is siphoned in all the way around the joint, and you can just take a damp rag and wipe off the excess. So there was really only 3 solder joints on this shower valve installation, and that was just a drop your elbow and then the 2 connections to the actual valve. And I like using the copper primarily because it gives it some rigidity and makes it a little bit easier to actually install when we actually put it into the wall and connect it to the fiberglass pan. But we'll get into that next. So we'll move on to the next part of this installation. All right, so we're gonna temporarily, I might end up moving this a little bit to fit my port properly, but let's just get this right about the same so when I cut my pecs. That's the other thing about pecs too, it has a little bit, you know, obviously it's flexible and you're able to manipulate it a little bit more. Copper is completely rigid and everything has to be pretty accurate. Okay, so we'll extend this out because I thought I had enough line up, but I don't. So I'm just going to use a cup link here to extend it. So like those regular crimps, I'll be trying to hold on to this to keep it right at the right spot, and that just holds everything together. It really doesn't make it nice and easy. Okay, and then you always want to use a no-go go gauge. I honestly don't know why they have both sides. I always just go with the go gauge. So you just stick this gauge on here. If it can slide over it, then you've crimped it correctly. So it's just like a double check. It also keeps you honest to make sure that you crimp everything. I think the biggest time, the only time I've really had leaks with PEX is when I didn't crimp it. Other than that, never really had an issue. So, and I'm sure that's the same aspect with the Pro crimps that they have for the copper. It's really simple. So, little PEX cutting tool makes some nice square cuts. So in a lot of ways, it doesn't get any easier than this with PEX. Just simply cut the tubing, put it together. Using those pro crimps really do help out a lot. And just making sure that you crimp them well, and then double checking them with the no-go-go gauge. And then you can move on to getting that shower wall in. And this has been used 100 times, but I just have a little female or male adapter with a port. I put this on here just to test everything. And I just always keep that in there during the duration of the project. So this system, like I said, is a pretty nice solid fiberglass unit, and it has these little pegs that kind of line things into the corners. Looks like I'm gonna have to bring this down slightly. So that works well. 100% silicone on this application. So we're just gonna basically right at this joint. A block here. So typically I make these 36 inches off the ground, but we want to reference where this is, this area here. That's basically where I'll be putting the grab bar. So 14 inches off of this. So then it just slides right in. Pre-drill your holes. It's honestly been quite a few years since I put in a fit to do it. I just, Now, so anywhere that your wall was kind of shimming out, you gotta put a shim, and then we'll address the wall thickness later. I'm gonna actually shim out this whole wall because, of this gap, essentially. Typically for a 3x5 shower, you got $1,200 worth of waterproofing. Okay. I mean, $1,000 to $1,200. You can squabble about what system you use, but just roughly say it's $1,000. And then typically most of your tile work, I haven't seen too many where you're not spending $1,000 on tile, because you're gonna have them typically. Now, one of the things I am gonna do in the future is an envelope shower, which is using the big, large format tile for your base. That's really popular, and that'll cut down a lot of cost, not necessarily on labor, but on the material cost. Because 2x2 tile and all that, they're roughly $10 a square foot. So anyways, typically your tile with a border, edging, whatever, got $1,000. And then your shower valve, you know, this one was a fairly inexpensive one. I spent, I think $230 with the valve and the trim. So that wasn't too bad, but it's just a single shower head. So $250 for that. So that's $22.50. You gotta get grout. I don't recommend just getting any cheap grout. I recommend getting, you know, epoxy or the premix like Special Lock 1, a high performance grout that doesn't need sealed. In this instance, I'm gonna be doing white on here. I'm not gonna go epoxy on this one, just because, you know, like how much water you're really getting up here. There shouldn't be any staining of any sort. I'm gonna go with Mapei FA up here most likely, and that's just it's a high performance grout that doesn't need sealed. I don't understand the science of it either, but it's easy stuff to work with. It's kind of your traditional grout per se, but it never needs sealed, which is a nice thing. So just say on a typical shower, you're spending $200 on grout because you would be buying, well, it really, I guess it depends. You could bring that down to $100. It's still gonna be $100. So that's $23.50 just on material on that. You're probably gonna want a recessed niche. So, you know, most of the time you can make up that waterproofing with the extra board that you have, but you know, say if you want to do a pre-made niche, you know, it's another $80. So yeah, you're roughly, if you're doing all the labor yourself, you're at $2,500 right out the gate to do this shower if you're doing all the labor yourself. So this was $600. I mean, it's kind of hard to beat in a lot of ways. And like I said, we're gonna make up some of the features in this bathroom by you know, doing the tile over here. We're gonna get a nice recessed medicine cabinet on the other side of the wall. Yeah. We're gonna do a Kohler, you know, has the glass in the back, so that's gonna feel high end. You're gonna have a decent vanity. So there's other things that we're gonna spend in this space that's gonna make it nicer.
Yeah, I think the tile above will make it feel more high end too.
Yeah.
And it's not expensive tile, it's just the subway tile, right? Yeah.
Right. So, you know, but you know, what it did do is that, you know, that's a minimum cost there. Typically, you know, I'm only personally saying on my behalf, typically I charge about $600 to install the waterproofing. And then it's usually around $2,500 to $3,000 for tiling. And that's me supplying all the thin set, but they're, you know, usually the client's buying the tile. So I'm just doing the thin set, I'm buying the grout, and I'm buying all the stuff that I want to, like the leveling clips and the spacers and all the stuff that it takes to actually install the tile, I'm paying for. So typically a 3x5 shower, $2,500 on expenses, plus, so just say roughly $3,000 for labor on the tile setting, and then, yeah, so $3,500, $6,000. I mean, you're at $6,000 for sure hiring somebody to do.
And that's just the shower.
Just the shower. That doesn't include the shower door. Shower door is going to be another $1,000 plus another $400. So, you know, a lot of people are shocked when they say, I just want a new shower, and they get quotes between $8,000 and $10,000 all day long. All day long, you're going to get that. And in this scenario, with the plumbing issues and the copper being all corroded, you'd be a fool to leave that the way it was. When you tear this all up, that's the investment you want to make. You want to make this plumbing last, because that's what really matters. If you have a leak, you can't sell your house. Who wants to buy a house with a leaking bathroom? You're going to get gouged at the you know, at the home inspection. You're going to get, no one wants to buy a house with a leaking bathroom, you know. So you want to spend the money on that portion. So if you don't have that allowance for to have at least a couple grand more to remodel, then you're gonna be screwed. So that's why we went with the fiberglass. I don't need to beat a dead horse on that, but you do have to think about, you know, how much you can really afford. And honestly, things are just getting more expensive. You know, the price discovery of all of our materials are getting out of control. Everyone's heard about the lumber prices shooting through the roof, but all the fasteners, all the metal, I'm surprised hasn't hit the tile industry yet. I haven't seen a huge increase in tile cost, but everything else that you put into these bathrooms is costing more. And then there's a lack of tradesmen out there. So there's like a lot of demand for renovations and very little supply of people to do it. So my costs are going to go up. You know, why keep working harder if there's no one out there doing this stuff? So there's a lot of reasons you should be paying attention to a budget, you know, really anticipating what the full cost is going to be. Because, you know, I didn't expect the plumbing to be as bad as what it was. This is a little weird on this system. But basically, they have these little, I guess you call them like what do you call them? Cam shafts, like little grippers. So this just goes into these. First off, you got to get this completely into the fiberglass unit. This just screws in here. Now, again, once I get the actual escutcheon plate on here, then it is going to hold everything together. But this is just for the rough in stage, because I still got to put my valve in. And I don't really do any of that stuff until I'm pretty much done with the bathroom. It's like the last thing that goes in. So these just thread into this valve body, and it kind of just pinches itself against the side of the unit. So yeah, so it tightens it, kind of holding it together. I think I stripped this one out testing because I wasn't 100% sure how it works. But yeah, so it's holding it in place, and then once I get the actual escutcheon plate on there, then it'll really kind of pull everything together. So I don't know, I give it a thumbs up for the American Standard flash valve. I think it was really easy to install. I would definitely do it again. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and shim out our walls, because just like a tub, you don't want to bow out any of your board going against your surround here. So I'm just gonna use I just ripped these down with a circular, or a table saw, just some 1/4 inch plywood. This is just a lot easier than cement board, and it's already waterproof, so it kind of makes it nice. All you need is a utility knife. Oh, I missed one. Huh. Mark my studs. Just scribe cut a little bit. Before we completely get that in place, I'm gonna put a bead of sealant. Okay, so what we'll be using is the Go board sealant. It's made for the board. I want to use door rock screws. I just use the 1 5/8 stuff. very important aspect is going definitely up against the edge of your shower. A bead of sealant. I would say even if you wanted to finish this with drywall mud, you can go ahead and do that. But you're still going to want to have a waterproof board up against this. So like I said, even if you wanted to corner bead this, finish it with drywall, at least put some go board back there. There's no problem with adding drywall mud over top of this. So we're going to use a piece of corner bead on this corner so that we can finish the drywall on the front. Okay, so we're going to do some simple subway tile, nothing special, fairly inexpensive, depending on where you get it. So first thing you want to do is get a laser on here. Even though that you set your tub and hopefully you got it level, you still want to double check that. You don't want to just start with a full tile and then, you know, possibly have a bigger gap on one side or the other. So put our laser on here. Let's just double check. So we got 1 3/4, 1 3/4. So we're a little bit down on this side. This is a little bit lower. This is about 2 inches on this side. So I don't know exactly why that's a 1/4 inch off, but that's the reason you want to always start with, you know, either half tile or just cut something off so that you don't end up with big gaps. Other thing is, you know, really simple for subway tile. Obviously, this is a really small space, so this would be kind of like a backsplash. You know, just so. Let's just say we're going to do it right here. We're going to make it 1 3/4. Let's just see what we end up with at the ceiling. Because obviously it'd be ideal to match this with this, or at least not having a sliver at the top. And with subway tile, anything less than 1 inch is going to look like a sliver. It's going to look like you didn't plan. So, so this is 1 3/4. So easiest way is just to run some tick marks up. Now, you're going to be using spacers on this, so it will grow slightly, but this at least gives you a good reference of what it'll be. Let's see what that is. So that's about 2 inches. So if you wanted to make it identical, you could just raise this up 1/8 inch. But honestly, I'm happy with that because it will grow a little bit, so this will end up being 1 3/4, I'm betting, by the time I'm done. But just as long as you have plenty of reference there. With 2 inches, I know that I'm going to have plenty of room up there. With a 5-foot shower, pretty easy. Just start from center, work your way to each side. I always recommend doing the back wall first. Main reason is basically when you have your towel here, your grout joint isn't present looking at the shower. It's kind of harder to see that corner grout joint. So start on your long back wall first and then do the sides. So that's simple enough. Let's see what our measurement is from the center, 58 inches. So that's 29 inches. So that's going to be our center mark. That's basically what we want to work off of. So 29, yeah, that works. some horseshoe shims for spacers. You want to leave a space between your acrylic tub. Main reason is because when you caulk this, leaving that gap will make a longer lasting caulk joint. So let me cut some tile. Pulling those towel right to the edge. So just mark where that'll end. And just take a look at what this will do. Here, the only thing I would do is offset this so that the smaller piece comes out so it looks like it's a full tile. This is 4 3/4, and then we're gonna have like another 1 3/4 piece. So, you know, it's gonna be 6.5 inches. It was really what that would be, but it's gonna look like a full tile. So we'll start out with a 5 inch, yeah, 5 and 2. So 5. So we'll start at the 5, 2, 5, 2, 5. So this would be a very important detail to do if you want a long-lasting bathroom. This is always an area that drywall gets deteriorated, so waterproofing and putting tile down the edge of this will definitely extend the life of the shower or any future repairs. So takes a few hours to do this, but in the end, you'll have a bathroom that'll last a long time. Just wanted to jump on real quick, show you what we're working on. Again, this is a budget bathroom, so we had a set price that we were trying to keep it under. And when it comes to bathroom remodeling, there's always unexpected items that cost a little bit more. Usually it's the plumbing and electric, and you never know until you uncover everything to find that out. So if you're going to be remodeling a bathroom, I would always recommend at least having 10-15% of your budget for extras, you know, so with the plumbing or electric. And in these days, shipping and all these different price discovery problems going on right now, you really have to account for higher costs on basically all of your materials. So if you're on a budget, follow along with me on this project. I'll be able to, you know, show you some of the things that you might encounter in your own bathroom. But what we did today is did some subway tile, as you can see, around the surround. So it still feels like there's a little bit of tile work, which is awesome. You know, I prefer tile showers, but as I was stating yesterday, you know, your core costs of doing like a 3x5 shower are normally a minimum of $2,500. So when you can do a surround, a fiberglass surround, I mean, this is a decent quality one. This is made by Clarion. It's, you know, it's pretty thick, and it was half that cost. It was $600. So it's hard to beat. And then, you know, obviously doing some tile work around here kind of gives you that tile feel. But one important detail I just wanted to go over real quick is that if you do acrylic or you do a fiberglass shower, I always recommend bringing your tile work down along the side of these enclosures. This is always a problematic area for drywall to deteriorate. In this instance, we're not even doing a shower door, we're just doing a shower rod. So in that case, very, very important. Like I would guarantee if with a shower curtain, that if you didn't have tile down here and have waterproofing up against here, it'd probably be deteriorated in about a year or so. So really good idea to waterproof up against these type of systems. What I'm gonna be doing is going to be, what I'll be doing in the live demonstration is putting the weedy subliner down on this floor. So this is going to be kind of preparation for tile, but I'm planning to actually do plank vinyl tile. So you might be wondering, well, how the hell is that going to make a difference in my budget? Because this stuff is usually about $3 a square foot. True. But if you're hiring somebody to do it, it's going to cost a lot more to have tile set, because you're going to be grouting. You know, it's just the time, it's the labor standpoint of doing tile. This stuff is going to go down really quickly, but I really wanted to get everything waterproof in a bathroom. I just think it makes sense to have everything 100% waterproof on your outside floor. So if there's any overflowing toilet, or you have a problem with your shower, whatever it is, you know that your whole bathroom is going to stay in good condition. I can't tell you how many times I've torn out bathrooms and the plywood is deteriorated all around the toilet flange, and you know, especially along the shower. In this instance, like I said, I'll be bringing out a lot more videos on this project, but there was a lot of rotten subflooring that came from the existing tub. So we're going to be installing this live and going over some of the details on that. But to prepare before I get into that, I did kind of a sloppy job on my subfloor, and there's about a 1/4 inch gap from this plywood to this plywood, and as you can see, I kind of miscut and I have a hole there. So I want to address that before putting the subliner down. Now, all intents and purposes, I could thin set that and put the subliner down, but I want to be able to do the flooring today as well. Hopefully I have time for that. But you're always better off to do a floor patch. My recommendation is just using Henry. This is basically Ardex. I believe owns this company now. Yeah, actually it does. Engineered by Ardex. So this floor patch material you can get at the big box stores. The other one that I really like is Ardex Feather Finish. And it's just an underlayment patch skim coat. What I really like about it though is that there's no priming involved. It can pretty much go over any surface. Now, if you have stuff that's loose and falling apart, you know, this is just going to fall apart because the bonding of whatever's on the floor might be a problem. And I mean, you wouldn't want to put this over paint either. So there are a couple restrictions. Make sure you follow the box. But this stuff is great. It only takes about 20 minutes for it to set up. So I'm going to do this before lunch and address this area. So let me just show you. So this is basically just 2 parts powder, 2 parts powder, 1 part water. So whatever you have to measure, it doesn't really matter. Just as long as it's 2-to-1 ratio will get you the right amount. Now they don't usually come, this is not a whole lot here. So if you had a lot of problems, you can go up to about a 1/2 inch of layer. So, you know, this is only about a 1/4 inch, so I'm within reason. But you could, you know, add multiple layers, but you just wouldn't want to go over 1/2 inch in one setting. So let's measure this out. We want to dampen the surface. And we're just going to go over this entire seam. I mean, this is all flush here, but I'm just going to go over this whole area. Okay, so I'm going to get just a little bit on the seam here because I'm going to reinforce this since there was such a big gap with just some cement board tape. So I guess I might as well just go ahead and do the whole area. So this will help kind of keep it from oozing down into that groove. And then we'll just reinforce this side as well. So what's nice is that like a lot of floor levelers and everything, they need a primer that you have to apply and then wait for it to dry, where this stuff you could just kind of just go right over it immediately. So it's definitely kind of a, you know, there's a purpose to these floor patches, and that's just speed. It allows you to get the coverage, you know, and just moving on to the floor. Yeah, there's a stupid staple there. So nothing much more difficult than just feathering this out. But even if I could just keep this within an 1/8 inch, you know, that would be better than having that big groove there. So that's really all there is to it. I just wanted to show you that reference if you did a bad job on your subfloor. You're live? Okay. All right, so YouTube didn't work out. I guess they wanted me to do something else before I can go live. But I wanted to install this weedy subliner, go over some pointers on this. And if you've been following along, you already know what I'm gonna say, but this is a budget bathroom. It's basically a bathroom that we were trying to keep around the $10,000 level. And we basically converted a tub to a shower. And in order to be able to account for unexpected items, that's one thing everyone has to realize. When you get into bathroom remodeling, it's not clear that everything underneath of your bathroom floor or in the walls are going to be in good condition. So plumbing, electrical is always an issue, and you have to expect extra items that might need to be done, because you don't want to go back and try to do that later. In this scenario, in this bathroom specifically, when I uncovered all of the walls, the plumbing copper lines were completely green from corrosion. So you don't want to leave stuff like that. You don't want to spend thousands of dollars, $10,000 on a bathroom and then have a plumbing leak or a pinhole leak. That's one common thing. This house is a split entry home. It was built in around 1975, 76, something like that. But that era is when they started to switch over to type M copper. So there's two different types, M and L. And the L was the thicker copper, but they started going with the cheaper thin copper. And it's been a real problem in this area because of pinhole leaks. So it's been about, 30 years now, 35 years. And now you're starting to see everyone in the neighborhood having to get some kind of plumbing, piping, water supplies having to be changed out because of those pinhole leaks. So I kind of knew that coming in because the client was really concerned about it. So I kind of knew that we were going to get into it, but I didn't know what would be involved to actually get the new lines down to the basement and everything else. So these are things that you really have to think about when you're doing a bathroom remodel. It's great to go for the tiled shower and do all that beautiful work, but if you're stretching your budget just to get that, it might be a good idea to go with a fiberglass shower, do a little bit of tile work. As you can see, I did some subway tile around the top, so it kind of feels like it's a tiled shower. But this was literally costing a third of what a tiled walk-in shower would cost. So makes a big difference. And the next thing what we're gonna do, like I said, we're gonna put this weedy subliner. I always think it's a great idea to always have your subfloor completely waterproof in a bathroom. I see no reason these days to leave your plywood unattended. Like, the days of using cement board are kind of out. There's really no reason for it anymore, especially with these membranes that you can just thin set down, and then they're also waterproof. So it's just a superior way to go about doing things. And there's all too often these old bathrooms, you tear up the toilet, you tear up the shower, and there's rotted subfloor. With waterproofing, you're going to eliminate that issue. So we're going to be doing actually vinyl plank, believe it or not, over top of this. But I wanted to get the subfloor waterproof before even installing this. Now, granted, if you are a DIYer and you're going to do your own bathroom, first off, please follow me because I'll be able to help you out with a bunch of advice and pass on the years of knowledge that I've picked up over 20 years now, but bathrooms specifically in the last 12. But labor to install tile is more than this vinyl plank. So that's how we're going to save money for the client. This is only going to take a couple hours to install, but I'm still going to be prepared with the waterproofing. So if someday they want a good tile, they just have to tear up the vinyl flooring, which is just floating. I'm sure everyone's aware now that most of this vinyl flooring is not adhered to anything. It's just kind of a free floating system. So you can just pull it up and then start setting tile if you wanted to. So the first thing is I'm going to just dry fit this. What I like to do is, if I can, is either use, now Weedy does come with its full inclusive system, but I always have Curdy band on hand. So I do, against the big companies, Weedy and Schluter, they don't want to share the warranty between each other. So if you're going to go with Weedy and you want to hold up on the warranty, you want to go with all Weedy products. If you're going with Schluter, do all Schluter. I mix them. I don't care. I think it's going to be fine. But most of the time I like to fold these up against the corners so that everything's waterproof all the way around this whole area. In this circumstance, I'm going to be able to bend up my subliner a little bit to provide that waterproofing up against the wall. And I'm only doing this a couple inches. I'm going to still have baseboard on here. So this is just to prevent, if there's an overflooding of the toilet or whatever, it's not going to go down into the crack and straight down into your room below.
When would you use the cement or?
Cement board, the only time I would use that is penny tile. Any tile that is like under 2 inches, 2 by 2s. Most of the manufacturers of the shower pans, they require the tile to be a minimum of 2 by 2s. So Weedy, Schluter, honestly, I don't know if KBRS has a mandate on that, but they want you to be 2 by 2 tiles or bigger. So if you're doing penny tile, I would go cement board on that. It's kind of actually funny that the Schluter pans, if you bought a Schluter pan, it actually shows right on the front image of penny tile on a shower floor, and they don't even warrant that. They do not allow tile under 2 by 2 to go over top of that unless they've changed things. I mean, they do change things from time to time. From what I understand, it's always been 2 by 2s or bigger. So that's probably the cement board the only time I'd use it is for penny tile on a floor, or if I needed additional height in the bathroom for some reason. Normally you're always trying to minimize that, but that's probably the only 2 scenarios: getting height and then using smaller than 2 by 2 tile. And then even then, when I'm cement boarding, I'm using a liquid waterproofing over top of everything because I think it's important to waterproof the entire bathroom. I mean, when it comes to budgeting a bathroom, I've done quite a bit of bathrooms, and I can't say there's been too many jobs that I've done that hasn't gone over budget. And that's, whether that's me personally because there's more labor involved, or, the materials just end up costing more, shipping, delays, whatever it is. And honestly, in the world today where things are not really being shipped on time, everyone's kind of in disarray as far as when things are coming in. I, as a contractor, I'm going to have to start charging to come back to do something. I can't usually when I'm bidding on a job, I'm figuring out, okay, here's how many days I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing this for 7 days. So if there was a couple towel racks that didn't come in, that's going to take 4 hours out of my day to come back and do that. So, those type of costs are going to start going up as well.
Could you put this membrane on a cement slab for a barrier to help with cracking and movement?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Over concrete, it is a little bit easier just to use liquid membrane. So you could just use something like Hydroban or Mapei Aqua Defense. You could use Red Guard. I don't really recommend it. I think that stuff is pretty terrible. This would definitely work just fine for that. I just don't know if it's worth the effort of thin setting that down over concrete. I think it's just easier to roll some Hydroban. I really like Hydroban, Latticrete Hydroban, because it dries really quickly. You can normally apply 2 coats that you need to do for waterproofing, and then 4 hours later almost tile, but it depends on the humidity level and everything else. So I'm just going to straighten this out. Because I want to bring it up the wall on both sides, especially in the shower area, because it's important to make sure this whole area so this is a fairly thick membrane. If anybody's used Curdy membrane, this is definitely probably like, I don't know the technical thing, but I'm betting it's twice the thickness as this membrane. This is pretty thin. This stuff is fairly thick. So we'll pull part of this back to get started. So the first step is always to dampen your subfloor. You don't want to be thin setting, no matter whether you're setting tile or setting membranes. You don't want to, you always want to dampen the surface so that the plywood doesn't zap the thin set moisture out. Make sure you get all the staples out of there. So you want to use a modified thin set to adhere this. Most of the thin sets at your box stores are going to be modified. And then the most important thing about the thin set is making sure it's really loose. So look on the back of the bag and mix it to the wettest ratio that you can. All the problems with membranes arise from the thin set being too thick, or whether you trout it and you let it skin over. But majority of the time it's because you didn't add enough water to the thin set, and you really want to make it is at the thinnest allowable amount. Of each type of product you use is going to have its allowance, within reason. You can actually go a little bit more in a lot of circumstances. But you can see, like, this is, it's just falling off my trowel. Like, you would not want to set tile with that kind of mixture. But for membranes, perfect. And then for the, I'm actually kind of surprised. It works fine, but Weedy requires a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch square notch trowel for this. So that is, it's a big trowel for this little bit of a membrane, but definitely will get this coverage. So just use the back side of the trowel first. And this is considered burning the thin set into the substrate. This helps with troweling. You get more uniform trowel lines if you burn this into the substrate, plus you're making sure that you have a good bond. So it's doing really kind of two things here. So it's really, you know, this is a very simple process, just thin setting it down. Okay, so let's cut some of this out. Okay, so then on the toilet flange, I'm going to kind of make this, I'm not going to cut right around it. I'm going to basically try to stretch this around the toilet flange. Most of the time when I'm doing tile work, I don't even put the toilet flange in until after the tile's set. You know, I set the tile and then, usually I just have a 3-inch pipe just sticking out, and then I waterproof around that pipe, and then I use a flange that goes over top of the tile and glues into that 3-inch pipe. I like that way better because then everything underneath the flange is completely waterproof. But in this circumstance, we're doing that vinyl plank stuff, so I just put the flange on top of the subfloor. But you'll find this, I mean, most homes are going to have the flange right on top of the plywood, and then when you're tiling or whatever, you're kind of flush with the toilet flange. But yeah, if I could just stretch this around here, and then I can make sure that this is waterproof, at least up to the flange anyways. You can even just leave it like that, because there's plenty of space around here. So when you're bonding up against the wall, you want to use a 1/16 inch square notch trowel, kind of like Purdy band. Okay, so up against the shower pan, I'm going to use the Weedy sealant that you want to buy with Weedy. So this is, you know, anytime you use any of their systems, you want to use the products that it comes with to ensure you're doing things properly. But I'm just going to put a bead right against the bottom of this shower receptacle so that this membrane will bond directly to that. You can go on the other side, babe, if you want. Unless you can see it. So this is just bonding this fleece to it. This would be the same concept if you had a tub too. I mean, I really think that's a critical area right here because that's definitely where a lot of water is going to be hitting. That's the edge. And then we're going to kind of wrap this up slightly up onto the shower pan. And then that'll create a nice, good seal again. So you can see how that's oozing up out of where the curtain membrane is. So we're going to be grouting the subway tile in this shower. So a more traditional grout that's less expensive. I mean, this is only about 30 square feet of tile. So I didn't want to go with the premixes or epoxy because it would have just been $100 to just do this little section. So I just got, this is my next favorite type of grout if it's not premixed or epoxy, and that is Mapei FA. It's a rapid setting grout. It's also very fine. It has a really fine grit to it, so it's not like a regular sanded grit, but it's kind of in between an unsanded and sanded grout. I would consider it a high performance grout because you don't have to seal it, so there's no additional maintenance that you have to do to it. But one of the main reasons I really like to use it because I can just, you know, basically apply it 20 minutes later, remove everything, and be done. So it really makes a nice, quick, efficient type of grout. And the fact that you don't have to stain it or seal it at any time in the future is a great bonus as well. So I was only able to get a 25-pound bag, and I definitely don't want to mix this whole thing. Traditionally, it's a good idea to mix the entire bag so that you have the right water ratio for this. You really don't want to be eyeing this stuff up. You want to be following the instructions, make sure you're using the proper amounts of water. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you can only use get a full bag, you want to weigh it. So I'm going to put it on a scale here. So it should be 25. So 25.4 ounces. Now the water ratio on this is 2.6 quarts per bag. That's about 0.1 per quart, or per pound, I should say. So let's try to make it about like 10 pounds. They do make smaller quantities of this grout. You can get it in a 10-pound bag. That's ultimately what I wanted, but they didn't have it. So let's just put some in a bucket here and try to get it to 10 pounds. So 16. 15.11. Let's take a little bit. 10. 9.5. That's close enough. That's 10 pounds. So with 10 pounds, you need a quart of water. It's 32 ounces. I'm just using this as a measuring device. This is a 32-ounce bottle. So it's really, like I said, it's really important to use the proper amount of water with this stuff, because you're going to get the best consistency out of it and make it for an easy installation. Let's just take our traditional mixing paddle and mix this. Okay, so this is a fairly, thick mud consistency. So it's fairly thick. That'll make it a little bit easier to apply. And then I'm using a Trox grout float. I like these a lot. They're kind of smaller and it has a flexibility to get the grout in the joint. So first thing you want to do is just wipe down your surface with a damp sponge. Make sure you get all that thin set, anything out of the grooves. And then we're just going to be simply just applying this, packing the joints. So very simple. And this is a real nice treat compared to packing epoxy. Being able to, it's very, very thin consistency. And it makes it really easy to pack it in. So just take your float on a 45-degree angle and scrape the excess off. But you're more wanting to pay attention to your joints, making sure that they're well packed. The surface grout is not a big deal. It'll come right off. So just pay attention to your joints more than making your tile clean. There's no real need to get this completely clean at this stage because it's really easy to remove the excess. So just by paying attention to the details, making sure that all these joints are filled. And you want to leave your corners free of grout and up at the top as well, because you're going to want to use a caulking for that, especially against this acrylic top or acrylic surround. This is going to flex and move a bit, so this is always going to crack right at this joint. You're going to want to silicone that joint. Boy, this is the smallest amount of tile that I've done in a long time. It's 30 square feet. So this, I would say I like this grout for many reasons. I mean, the fact that I can move on with my day after this sets up. Takes about 20 minutes to set up and then I can remove it. But this does make for an easy application. Very forgiving. The only problem with it is that you can't really go back after this, stuff sets up. You have to, if you have a problem with your grout, you can't just like fill it over. You have to take out the grout completely out of the joint and start over kind of. So that's where the pre-mixes are kind of really nice, because you can just always just take some out of the bucket real quick and just fill in a spot, where this you have to mix a whole nother ratio of it. But okay, so then just let that sit for about 20 minutes. Basically, you're going to be doing the finger test, but it takes about 20. It depends on the humidity in your home. It's about 70 degrees here. It's pretty humid, so probably going to wait the full 20 minutes. But you basically just want to make, when you touch these joints, you don't want the grout coming out onto your finger. You want to be able to mold those joints. So very similar to epoxy and some other grouts. So let it sit for 20 minutes and you can remove the excess. Okay, so I'm going to be installing a vent fan, and I'm trying to determine, there's no duct work up there, so they never vented it out of the house. So I'm looking on the outside of the house to see the best way to go about this. So first thing I want to notice is come over here. So the window where the ladder is, that's the bathroom, okay? So we're about 8 feet to the gable. So my options are, I can use a vent hood that would come through the exterior of the house. Now I have to obviously climb up into the attic and do that. I'm gonna have to drill a hole from here and then crawl up in the attic and connect it. The other option would be to use one of these. This is just a simple vent, 4-inch vent that I could put right into the soffit. So this is gonna be a lot easier because I can cut the hole from my vent fan and just grab the flex duct and go to that outside eave. So that is a really great option, makes it really simple. And as you can see, it has like a little guard in here so no bugs or anything can climb into the actual vent. But I also wanted to show you here on the back side of the house. So on this particular situation, you could see the gutter is directly against the house. So there's not going to be any way to do a soffit duct. So if your bathroom is off the back like this, you're going to have to go through the gable end. Now there's one other option, and that's going through the roof, but I highly don't recommend that unless you're a roofer who does that. You don't want to have the liability of it leaking. So either go out the gable or do a soffit vent. You want to use a 4¼ inch hole saw for this, because you want this basically has some tabs on the back that will basically grip itself inside of there once you push it up. So make sure that this is big enough for this to cover that. And I would recommend going on the flat surface of your soffit. So then I can just bring my ductwork through here, and then I'll be able to connect it real easily. Okay, so it's been about 20-25 minutes, and so it kind of feels a little bit dry, and you can even see some of the dryness on top of the tile. So that's about the scenario of when you're ready to remove it. It's when you can't press and take anything off. Well, you're going to take some off your finger, but you just want this kind of skinned over dry look. And really the most important thing is just paying attention to the time frame. Usually about 20 minutes is when you're ready to use it. So just test the spot. It's not very, at this point it's very moldable. So you're just using your sponge to tool the joint. So you can make some circular motions and try to get those joints nice and smooth. But if you start seeing the grout pulling out of the joint, then just stop and wait a couple more minutes for it to set up. But right now, this looks pretty good to me. All I'm doing is gonna just do circular motions and remove the excess grout off of the tile, and then try to tool the grout joints to make it nice and smooth. And these Ardex sponges are pretty much my favorite. That's all I use. They are expensive, but man, compared to a crappy sponge you get at the box store, these things are really nice. I think it's the square edges too that make it nice. But there's a real big difference between a cheap sponge and using this. So I highly recommend it. And you can order these off of Amazon. Go to my Amazon store and order these. But if you're doing this, for this little project, you'd be fine with anything. But if you're doing a shower, I would definitely recommend buying 3 or 4 of these just to make it easy on yourself. So I don't have a whole lot of water on this sponge. It's just a little bit of dampness. You don't want to have too much water on this or you'll run out the joint. And if you do run out the joint, unfortunately you're going to have to wait and fill that in. Now, if you did mix up a big batch of grout and you have some excess, you might be able to patch some things while you're doing at this stage. So a lot of flexibility with it. So just pay attention to these joints, make sure they're nice and smooth. And then it's going to haze over again, so don't worry about that, but as long as you have the big excess amount of grout off. All right, and then you'll just let that, it'll haze over again in about an hour or two. You can use some Windex you know, and wipe the excess haze off. But that's pretty much simple as that. So it's really nice, easy stuff to work with. So I definitely highly recommend that for smaller projects or really any project. But one thing about the EFA is that it does absorb a little bit of water. So if you're doing like a full tiled shower, when you actually wet it, it'll actually get darker. So that's one thing. That's just always been a pet peeve of mine, is seeing the grout darken from the water exposure. So that's one difference between the epoxy and this. Okay, so I've mentioned this many times about my favorite vent fans, Panasonic. So I just wanted to do a live demonstration here of installing this. Hopefully it goes well, so stick around. But really I wanted to talk about venting these things. So there's really 3 different options when it comes to installing vent fans for venting out of your house. So number 1, which would be the best way, is having a roof vent, having something that goes straight through the roof. I think that's the most efficient way to get the humid air out of here. But if you have an older roof, it's probably not something that you really want to do. Especially, it's going to be hard to find a roofer that wants to come out and install that. If you do it yourself, or if you're a contractor doing a bathroom renovation, I would stay away from that just because of the liability issues of it leaking. But if you do have the opportunity to do it, I think the roof vent is the number 1 best way to go about it. This scenario in this home, I wasn't very surprised, but they put this little cheap vent fan in and it just vents straight to the attic. And I was telling the client that I think it's really important these days to have the vent out, especially in our area now. It's starting to get more humid. We're getting more of those 90-degree days. And you really just don't want humid air just sticking around in your attic. You want to vent it out of the house. So the second way would be just using one of these dryer vent type things with the louvers. So this is typically can be done going out the gable of your home. Now, if you're more than 8 feet, you're going to want to hard pipe it. So you're going to want to have a solid pipe where there's no corrugated flex duct. The flex duct is the easiest to install, but the hard duct is something, if it's over 8 feet, you're going to want to do. So in a lot of scenarios, it could be 12, 20 feet away from where your bathroom is. So sometimes this isn't a really great option either, but that is definitely something that you want to consider going out the gable end of your home. So, but to really make things easy is using one of these soffit vents. So if you can see out here, I don't know if you can see that, we have soffit. I already cut a hole here. So all I have to do is just take that vent and run it up over top of your wall here and just attach it to the vent fan. So it makes it really simple. They have a little screen guard on the back, so your bugs and things don't get into this. But all it takes is a 4.5-inch hole saw in your soffit. If you have an overhang, not all homes have overhangs, so it could still be problematic on that. But I find this to be, I always have these on hand because I think this is the easiest way to vent your vent fan. So let's get this out. And these Panasonics, I mean, I've installed many of them, and I just like how they can be retrofittedly installed. So this is an important bracket that it has. You stick this up into the ceiling, and then that's how you mount the actual vent fan. Hold on to this piece. This is going to give you the dimensions of the hole that you need to cut. So we'll pull that apart. Vent cover. And I always recommend getting the vents that are just vents, not with a light. Now, I mean, Panasonic does make some great ones that have little tiny LED lights in them. I think that's great. I just think a lot of the vent fans that have full globes on them, you have a very small perimeter for that air to escape out of. Whereas when you have a full screen like this is going to be your best bet to get that humid air out of the bathroom. So I personally recommend my clients buy just vents and then add a light to the shower, add a recessed light where you want it. I just think it's more practical. Plus, some of these vent fans, well, most of the time you're just going to have 2 wires coming in here. So if you don't want to change out your whole line, then you're having the light turn on at the same time as the fan. Not a big deal, but it's just you know, again, I just think it's better to have just the vent fan itself. So this will come with a 4-inch port on it. You can reduce it down to 3-inch if you needed to. So I'll just take this out here. All right, so this light is actually connected to this right now. So I'm not 100% sure whether the light was wired first and then the fan was added, or vice versa, but we'll find that out here shortly. But they are both connected. As soon as you turn on the fan, it turns on the light. So I at least know that's going for it. Oh, it's connected to that light too. What the hell?
Sure is.
Well, they show the fan placement here, and I'm gonna have to figure out what the hell's going on with it. I was hoping it was just gonna be directly wired to this, and that was it. Oh, no, it's not even mounted. Jeez, just sitting up there. All right, well that was an easy removal. Amazing. Well, you know what? We'll get that out here in a minute. All right, so I got my ceiling joist here, so I'm gonna have to keep this in this area here. Plus I have my port over here, so, you know, ideally it would have been nice to center with the shower, but I'm not gonna patch all this. I'm gonna patch this hole, but I'm not gonna redesign everything here. So we'll just basically trace this out. Okay, so as you can see, my roof line is right here. So I'm gonna probably,
Should grab that old vent.
What's that?
Grab the old vent.
There is no old vent.
No, I mean the fan. You left it up there.
Yeah, I know. Oh yeah, I can take it out
Yeah,
now.
take it out now.
I don't know why they did a great wiring job on it too. It's not the way you want to connect. You want to make the connections inside the box. That's why you want to use Romex connectors. It looks like they probably just shoved it right in there. I mean, not the end of the world, but definitely not the way you want to do it. You know, these fans are absolute garbage. I mean, look at that. Like, that's very little flow that could possibly come out of here. I'm betting this thing wasn't rated for more than 50 CFM, cubic feet per minute. 50, yes, 50 CFM. So that's, you know, this is a 60 square foot bathroom, so you would want something bigger. Usually the rule is about 1 cubic foot per minute per square foot of your space. So 60 square feet, you want to be, yeah, you want to get about 60 CFM. But these Panasonics have ranges on it from 50 to 150. I'm not really sure I see the point of reducing the CFM power. I guess for efficiency reasons, if you want the fan to run more often, you might want to lower that so you don't spend so much running that fan. But I always just have it full blast so you can get the humid air directly out of there. So, all right, so then this guy is just going to be, this can span a 2-foot space. So this just gets placed in here. And then just screwed into the joist. So just kind of even it out on the opening. So these vent fans are about 120 bucks. Not too bad. I'll be able to screw this into this side as well. Okay. What I really wanted to show you was that this mechanism completely comes off of here. So there's a screw right here you can take apart. It comes off of here. You gotta disconnect the fan first. So this comes out. That's what makes this so easy, because then you can take this and install this in first, and then take that whole box and shove it up. So let me grab my duct. So I'm just using corrugated duct. Now, one thing I'll say about this is that you don't want to go over 8 foot with the corrugated. Secondly, it is best to have insulated duct, but I'm going to have insulation all around this thing because it's right at the eave here. So I didn't go and get the flex duct with the insulation, but that is a good idea, especially in humid environments. It just keeps the condensation from building around this, but I feel comfortable because I'm literally a foot. So, you know, the insulation around this is gonna probably just be fine. So let me just move some of this insulation out of the way. So then these things have these little wing nut things on here. So if you push them around those wing nuts, it'll hold the ductwork on there, or the flex duct. That's all there really is to it, so it just kind of sticks up in there. And I'm going to leave myself a little bit of flexibility here to connect this. So I'll connect the wires here in a little bit because I really don't know what's going on there, and I don't want to bore everyone with this being live. But when you connect this, we'll just connect the whole fan as if it was being done. But make sure that this flap says, look at that. I mean, you can see how much better flow that is. Much, much bigger space. So, but I would recommend getting one of these worm drive clamps. See, so that's not going to go. Oop. That's why you pull on it. Make sure it doesn't go anywhere. I'm going to put some tape around here too. That's just like an extra air seal. Foil tape. So then, this is where it's really made easy here. So you just slide this into that cavity. So if I just had a simple wiring connection, I mean, I'd be pretty much done that quickly. But I got to figure out what's going on here. I think the hot supply is here, and then I'm gonna have to. I don't know. I hope I don't have to make a junction box, but I might just bring everything into here to reconnect. And then what I'm gonna do is add a shower light off of this. So I'm gonna just use one of these halo lights. I like these a lot. I mean, they're really easy to install. Just cut a 4 1/4 inch hole, and then you just basically, this is your box. Connect the wire to the fan, and there you go. So very couple of user-friendly things. You can't go wrong with either one of these. I'll probably put it on a story again, but my Amazon store, I'll have both of these products on there. It makes it easy to find and grab. And yeah, so if they help you out, and I'm gonna figure out this wire. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put our valve trim on here. Okay, so on a shower port arm, I always try to put this in before I mess around with the valve, but just go clockwise around your pipe, 3 to 4 revolutions, and you just want to use a little bit of T+2. So typically you get this to about 2 o'clock by hand tighten that. So we're usually about there, and you can just tighten the rest of it. I'm just making sure you see this, that's all. Okay, so this cartridge just has an up indicator, so you just want to make sure that you point this up. Okay, take this little plastic cap off. Maybe son of a gun. I had a feeling that might happen. You gotta be kidding me. So this has a little foam gasket on it. You want to just make sure that this is down so when water gets around here it can escape. So you want to make sure you run some water through here before you put your shower head on. So it's really important to check the temperature. I'd always recommend, especially if you're a contractor doing this for a client, make sure that this is not above 120 degrees. And if you're getting it inspected, I would recommend just making this at 115 so that you make sure that you're not going to fail inspection. So this is just a simple little Klein tool, has a thermometer on it. So turn your water on, turn it all the way up, and then just gauge the temperature. But like I said, you want to be below 120 degrees. Most hot water tanks are set around 130 degrees. So if you don't do this, you can get scalding hot water. So there's 111, 115, 117, 119. Yeah, so we're roughly about 120. So that's not too bad. But like I said, if you're getting this inspected, you want to be below that. But this is real simple to change out. It's just a matter of taking out this little tab here. Now this is American standard valve. So you pull this out and it has little indicators on it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you turn this counterclockwise, it'll make it colder because basically it's going to stop the valve at this location. So if you want to get it colder and you don't want it to be as hot, just keep rotating it counterclockwise and then test it again. So all it does is basically keeps that handle from twisting anymore at the hot. Okay, so for the sealing joint, I like to use this quick dry siliconized acrylic latex caulk. So the siliconized, the quality of this allows this to be flexible and last a long time, and then the latex allows you to paint it. So I just like to use that right up against the sealing joint here. And to prevent it from smearing, just use a little bit of Windex. You know, it helps keep it from smearing on the tile. Okay, so then for all the other joints, I'm going to use the matching caulking. This is 100% silicone, the Mapasil T. So I always try to recommend just getting the siliconized version of this, not the acrylic. And again, spray the joint so that it doesn't smear on the actual tile. Okay, so if this is wet, because we just ran the shower faucet, I'm gonna let this whole thing dry before I even try to caulk this, because if there's any water in any of these grooves, you're just not gonna get a good caulk joint. It's just gonna end up falling apart on you when you get water mixed in with the silicone. So let's make sure this dries. We'll do this the last thing of the day. But we had all that water hitting this shower system, and water and silicone do not work very well together. Okay, so we're going to be putting this plank tile down. Now this is a very simple installation, and since it's a bathroom and it's so small, it's not going to be a real big deal to be able to cut and get this adjusted in the room, because it is a floating floor system. So you'd be able to you know, basically I'm going to start out the row, and if I need to cut a smaller piece, I can. So. you see this?
Yep.
Okay, so this is considered coping, so you just put it on a 45-degree angle. This helps out a lot, especially on bathrooms, because you always have that waterproofing kind of keeping that corner from being straight. So this coping saw, you just go right along this line, right along the edge, and just cut it back. You know what, I'm gonna have to get those pipes on first too, actually. Okay, you gotta deburr this. Yeah, that works. Okay. Yeah, it's not too bad. So this is nice on this one. This has a cable, so you don't have to mess around with the pop-up drain. It'll just connect right to this. So that's pretty nice. I always hated those pop-up drains. It's a nice way to do it. This just has to be facing back because that's what you connect your cable to. Okay, so when you put your P-trap in, just always extend it into your actual arm here and get it lined up, and then make a mark. And then from here, you just want to take a couple inches into the pipe. You don't want this going all the way into your fitting, otherwise you'll get a clog into the back of the drain. So you don't want this much extending into the drain like that. This is a great tool for that. Just cuts the pipe. These fittings always tapered end goes down. when you connect your braided line, this like braided line that comes with the light fixtures, always extend them out like past a 1/4 inch. Otherwise, if you keep them even, a lot of times you'll just grab the copper and you won't grab the braided line. So to make a better connection, just extend that up about a 1/4 inch. The line. Okay, so we're going to be installing some grab bars. Now, it was really important to have some blocking behind a surround like this. They do make these basically glorified toggle bolts to anchor to this, but on a fiberglass surround like this, you really need to have wood blocking. I don't really think that they're going to tell you that you can just go through. I mean, this is only a 1/4 inch thick material, so if you're going to install grab bars in your own shower, you really have to make sure that there's blocking behind it. And that's just going to simplify the entire installation as well. So, but basically, a typical standard height is about 36 inches. So, I mean, we're about 33.5. So we're a little low with the way that this configuration of this shower surround. It didn't really have an option. We weren't going to be able to put an 18-inch in here. I mean, we could have went vertically, but this is obviously going to be a more stable and easier, basically, location for somebody to grab onto when they're in the shower. Okay, then we'll just use a little bit of silicone here over these holes. I mean, this isn't ideal to put a hole in your surround, but at least the silicone will give you a little bit of insurance. I wanted to show you guys one of my favorite toilets. I've probably installed 100 of these things, and it's my go-to. It's what I recommend to all my clients, and I've really never had an issue with them. They're really simple to install. You need a limited amount of tools to install them, but it's the American Standard Cadet 3 models. I just really find them to be a fairly reasonable price, but also really high quality. Never had a real issue with them that I can speak of. So I'm going to show you how to install, show you how easy this is to install. So let's just get this out of the box and get started. And this is a tall height. I believe that's what I got. But I mean, it really is better to have the taller heights these days.
I noticed your haircut.
What's that?
I noticed your haircut. It was so bad before.
It was pretty bad. Okay, so within the package has everything we really need. It even has a tool to mount my bolts on, which is really nice. And I'll show you here in a bit. I love the caps because there's really no need to cut any of the bolts. Their cap system makes it really simple. Toilet. And then this is the wax ring it comes with. Again, I'll explain that here in a minute. I don't really use these because you're better off with what I'm going to be using here shortly. So real simple, just use that rubber gasket it comes with. Now, when you're looking at toilets, or if you're looking to replace your own, pay attention to the distance of your toilet flange. Always pay attention to the distance between your toilet flange and the wall, because they make toilets in different rough-in measurements. So they go 10 inches, 12 inches is the most common, and then you have a 14-inch rough-in. So we've got 11 to the base trim, so like 11 and a half to the actual wall. So this is a 12-inch rough-in that you can use. Now the American Standards, in my experience, the smallest it can go down to for this tank, and that's really what they change. When you get a 14-inch rough-in, the tank sits back further. The 12-inch is kind of standard, and then the 10-inch, it's like a really narrow tank. So that's what gives you that distance difference between the wall. But in my experience, about 11 1/4 is about the minimum width from the toilet to the wall. And that's going to make this toilet tank completely tight to the wall. Anything less than that, you're going to have to get a 10-inch rough-in. I mean, I'm measuring off the base trim, so I'm going to add a 1/2 inch to the thickness of my base trim. So it's about the wall thickness, because that's where the tank comes up against the wall. So like I said, right now I'm at 11 inches center, so that's really 11 and a half inches. And so I'm probably only going to have about a 1/2 inch gap between my tank and my back wall. But a lot of the older homes, they used to have, well, it depends on how old your homes are, but a lot of them had tanks that were mounted to the wall, and those were always like 14-inch rough ends. So again, just pay attention to what you have existing. You should be able to find that pretty easily. Once you remove the toilet, or even when you have the toilet in place, you can just measure to where the bolts are, and that'll give you an indication of what kind of size you're going to need. So these are just the nuts it comes with to attach the tank. And then these just need to be hand tightened. They give you this little tool, which is really nice, just the nut driver for it. So you don't need to have your own socket wrench or anything. You can just use this tool to tighten it. So in these bolts inside the tank, you can see have rubber gaskets on them. You just want to see those kind of squeeze down. When a toilet leaks, it's mainly because of the way the wax ring was installed, whether the toilet actually moved or not, if it rocked or anything like that. That's usually the reason they leak. But usually the problem ends up where the toilet just keeps running. So the rubber gasket, the cheap rubber gaskets they put in the cheaper toilets just don't last that long. This is made by Fluid Master, the inner side guts of the American Standard. So, you know, that's a pretty reputable company, and that should really last a long time.
Billy Hippa said, incredible that Home Depot charges upwards of a minimum $200 for a toilet installation.
$200
for a toilet installation.
You know, I was thinking about that yesterday. You know, as far as, so this bathroom, if you've been following along, I've been trying to keep at the 10 grand level. That didn't happen. There was a lot of extras with the plumbing and electrical that had to be moved around. So we're approximately about 11.5. And as you can see, I did a fiberglass shower, and that's the way we were able to keep that cost down. And one of the core reasons, not just material-wise, because obviously the fiberglass unit is basically half the cost of what a waterproofing system for a tiled shower would be. But it really comes down to the tradesmen who are out there working and the time they have to allot. Not the time that you're in their house, but the time that they have to allot to take care of your job. So putting in a toilet, I mean, how many houses can you go in a day? I mean, maybe 4 homes you can go to and change out a toilet. You're gonna take 2 hours each. They might only be in your home as fast as I'm gonna be installing this. I mean, this is, you know, if I keep talking, it's gonna take me longer, but 25 minutes to install this. I would charge $200 too, because the running around, you have to account for that. So it's just opportunity cost, honestly. So, all right, babe, you want to stand in the shower so you can see. Okay, so it comes with the wax ring. So these are not terrible. They're just not the highest quality type of wax rings. You can see that they're kind of really thin layered, kind of cheap. All intents and purposes, it would work great for this. You can see my toilet flange is just about flush with my flooring. So a standard wax ring is going to work just fine on that. But this just isn't a really high quality wax ring. And these days, I'm just upgrading to foam gaskets. I find them to be, you know, I mean, only time will tell how long these things last, but it might, you know, they just seem like they're going to last a really long time because they're made out of foam. One nice thing about it is when you go to set it, if you misplace it or if you screw up, not a big deal because it's not going to smash down like a wax ring would do. If you set the toilet down wrong or mess up and you line up with the bolts, you just screwed up this wax ring and you have to get another one. Whereas this, you can keep placing it until you get it right. And you know, I just don't see how this is going to deteriorate. You know, I think this is going to last a really long time. So I've been moving on to the foam gaskets. Now these are like $10, so they're like twice as much as what a wax ring.
And they're available at your Amazon store, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
We'll link it.
Yes. Thanks, babe.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear me. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
with the
hopefully you can hear.
Is everything good?
I don't know. It takes a minute for people to get on.
Okay. All right. So
Okay.
yeah, just a matter of installing this over top of the bolts. Pretty easy.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you. Loud and clear. Perfect. Thank you.
So then these are the bolts. Did you get them?
What's
Were
that?
you able to see exactly what I did there?
Go ahead and do it again.
No. So this is what's nice about it. Is like if I didn't have that sitting down right, I could just take the toilet back up. Or even better, if you're in a home that you only have one toilet and you're renovating a bathroom and you need to keep reinstalling a toilet each day, this is a great way to do it, is use one of those foam gasket rings, because you can just take it off and put it right back on. So, but yeah, this is always the nervous part about with a wax ring. You know, I have to make sure that I'm nice and centered above those bolts and I set it down properly, because if I don't, then the wax ring gets smushed in the wrong direction, and then I don't have a good seal. But you know, when you use these foam gaskets, man, it just makes it so much easier, and I don't have to worry about it. So it just sets right down on top of there. What I love about this American Standard is these bolt covers. You could just use your hands to tighten them. Really, really simple. I wish all the manufacturers would do this. I'm not sure why they don't. But man, it really makes it, I mean, not that screwing a nut on's that difficult, it's just anything that can speed up anything a couple of minutes makes a big difference. And I find, you know, some people actually crank down too tightly with the nuts, where this, I mean, you're only hand tight, so whatever it is. So yeah, just hand tighten them. And you want to make sure that there's no rock. So this is really important, because if you have a lot of rocking movement in any way, you're going to, I mean, the foam gasket is probably unlikely you're going to break the seal because it just has so much volume under there. But the movement is usually what ends up being a problem, and then you end up with a leak at some point. So always check how it, so now you can see I'm about a ½ inch behind my wall. So like I said, my rough in on this one was 11.5 inches from this back wall. So I still have almost a ½ inch of room. So I probably almost could get to that 11-inch mark and still be able to install the toilet. So then the caps, there's no cutting of bolts, just slip it right over top, really easy. Like I said, the only thing you need is a supply line. And so this is a 12-inch one. You know, that's one thing I wanted to mention. When I install my valves for the toilet, it's always on the left side. Okay, so that's number one. Two, I go 8 inches off the floor so that it doesn't protrude with my base trim. And then from the center of the toilet over about 8 inches. So 8 inches up, 8 inches over. And your supply line should just be able to use a 12-inch supply line, and you don't have a, you know, huge curly Q of supply on it. So you can see where this is at. This is, you know, that's just about perfect. There's really no extra line here, because who really wants to see your supply line? I don't think anybody really likes seeing that. So you can minimize the size. No Teflon tape. You don't really need that because of the gaskets that, or the rubber gaskets that are in these supply lines. So don't worry about Teflon taping them. You can for extra insurance if you really want to. But I'd say you don't want to over tighten these. You could over tighten this and then end up breaking this. So trying to go snug and then just a little bit further. So let's turn this on. While that's filling up, we'll just get our toilet seat on here. Okay, so sometimes you have to adjust this. You can see how this is, the water line's all the way up at the top of my fill valve. So we need to just go counterclockwise to basically get this float. Or I'm sorry, let me just see where that goes. Yeah, I'm sorry. This has to go down in order for it to stop the water from flowing up. So you want to go clockwise and bring this float down a little bit so it doesn't go above that line. Now this is by plumbing code. So the International Plumbing Code does state to silicone the bottom of your toilet. Now I get a lot of hate for this sometimes. A lot of the plumbers agree, some disagree. And a lot of the disagreement has to do with if you caulk the toilet, then you don't know if it's leaking, and then you ruin your subfloor. I think my argument on that is that probably if it's leaking, no matter what, it's probably leaking long enough that's going to be a problem. So to solve the issue, or solve, you know, the two arguments on that, is just to leave an area in the back of the toilet unsiliconed so that if it did leak, you'd be able to see that water from underneath of there. But I think for sanitary reasons, and that's probably the reason why it's in the code, is to silicone it, but it also makes sure that it also kind of makes the toilet more stable and fastened. So I think it does two things there, but for me, I think it's the sanitary thing that makes a big difference. Any old toilet I picked up, it's just all grody and nasty under there. So if they would have just siliconed it, then you would have had no issue. So I'm just gonna go all the way around. I've got some matching silicone. You wanna use 100% silicone. And this always used to be a scary thing for me right here because I didn't want to smear it all over the floor. But I took a course, or I took a test for tile installation. And any tile installer, I highly recommend getting your certification. It's a certified tile installer, CTI. And you know, one of their big things, you learn everything about tiling on how to make sure you have the proper coverage, to the proper gaps that you have in the corners, just doing all the TCNA requirements for tile installation. So it's just kind of testing your ability. And it is a very difficult test. But they, you know, what they require are like 1/4-inch gaps in the corner of the tile work. And I actually ended up failing that part of the test because my joints were just so ugly looking. And I didn't really, it wasn't until recently, or till last, 3 years ago, that all you have to do is use a little bit of Windex to spray the silicone, and it won't smear onto the tile work or the surface that you're installing this with. So it's really as simple as that. Just spray the whole joint, and then you'll be able to get a nice caulk joint all the way around. It doesn't smear onto the floor, doesn't smear onto the toilet. It just makes it a real nice joint. So a little small tip there, but boy, it used to be painful when I didn't used to do that, because you'd be just there forever just trying to stop it from smearing.
Why do you use that Windex in particular, though?
The vinegar one I just use because it's clear. I've had issues with the blue dye, and that's not on the floor here, but I've had problems with the blue dye staining the grout or the
tile.
The tile.
Yeah.
It's really annoying because like once you spray this on here, you can't just go with the towel and wipe it off, because then you're going to smear your caulk joint. You have to the Windex kind of stays on the floor a little bit, so that dye was kind of getting into things, so it really kind of created a problem for it. That's why I always, and plus vinegar, great for epoxy haze removal, or any type of even grout or thin set. It's not tremendous for that, but it's really good for the epoxy haze and stuff, just using a little bit of vinegar. So there you go. Now they have a joint there. Just make sure everything flushes well. And then again, just double checking that tank level. So really easy. Highly recommend the American Standard Cadet 3s. I don't know if Amazon sells them, but if they do, I'll have it on a story shortly where you can go straight to my Amazon store and purchase them. But yeah, thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, we will post this for sure.
So there you have it. There's the full complete renovation of this bathroom. I'm really hoping you got some ideas out of this on how to keep this under a budget. Just to let you know, this was roughly around $3,000 worth of material. So you can see you can save yourself quite a bit of money if you do this yourself. And obviously I did this in 7 days, as I demonstrated throughout this video. I do not expect most of you to be able to do that in that amount of time, but it is definitely possible. And hey, if you're looking into doing your own bathroom remodel, check out my courses. I have complete step-by-step guidance on how to go about bathroom remodeling. It's really well organized into a curriculum that you can keep revisiting, and it's kind of broken up into smaller, compact ways for you to learn how to do it. So thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much.